But what happens to people when they have no hope? I have a good friend. Her name is Pam Lantos. Pam was an overweight, depressed housewife. She had been under the care of a psychiatrist for 5 years, who assured her every time they got together that she would always need him because you are never going to get any better. I am your only hope. Bottom line is, she literally was sleeping from 12 to 18 hours every day. She only got up to prepare her children and husband breakfast, then she went back to bed. She got up then to prepare them dinner, and she went back to bed. That was her daily routine, and it had been going on for several years. And then one day she heard an advertisement on the radio, and the advertisement was about a health club, and it kind of piqued her interest. And as a matter of fact, for the first time in a long time, she caught just a glimmer of hope. As a story within a story. General Robinson Dreisner is a friend of mine. He was a prisoner of war in Hanoi Hilton for about 7 years. 5.5 years he was in solitary confinement in a minute, small cell. I guess that's the same thing, isn't it? Minute and small. Well, minute's even smaller than small. Well, anyhow, that little old bitty place that he was confined in. And the way he kept from literally losing his mind was that he would jog by the hour right there in place in his cell. And his cell on occasion was so depressing in there, he would take his underwear and stuff it in his mouth and scream at the top of his voice. He did not want the enemy to know that they were getting to him. And he said one day, in the depth of his despair, he was down on the floor in this little cinder block cell, and he started crawling around and putting his eye up against the wall, hoping he could see something on the outside. There was a minute crack, and he saw a single leaf. And he told us in one of our classes here, our Born to Win seminar, he said, "You will never know what it meant to me to see a single green leaf after having seen no sign of life other than my tormentors all of these years." I don't know how the story impacts you, but that day I made a new resolution. That was, I'd be very careful about what I complained about, and very sensitive to the things that I have to be grateful for. Pam Lantos that day, listening to the radio, caught somewhere just a glimpse, a glimmer of hope in what that commercial said. She decided to get up and go down to that club, and she watched the people there, and everybody was smiling, everybody was busy, everybody seemed to be in a good mood and having fun. She decided to join. Well, you see, that's step number one, and that's so important. We've all got to have that first step. My friend Joe Saba said, you don't have to be great to start, but you got to start to be great. And so Pam saw that. She had taken that first step. She joined the club. And when she started exercising, she started feeling so much better. As a matter of fact, she got a job selling the enrollments in that club and was very successful at it. But she was very spasmodic. She was up and down. She was on the roller coaster, because you don't cure depression like that, just by a few exercises and a few weeks. And so her manager gave her a set of my tapes, which contains basic information I'll be sharing with you every week in these classes. And she started listening to those tapes, and that was the encouragement that she needed to fuel the hope. She stabilized her productivity, which consistently got better and better. And then she decided she wanted to sell radio advertising, because she really loved radio. She applied for her favorite station. They weren't even interviewing anybody, wouldn't even talk to her. So all she did, because she had that hope, and if you've got hope, you'll take action, she just showed up at 8 o'clock when the manager got there, and sat just outside of his office from 8 o'clock until 5 o'clock when he left. She did it 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, and on the 4th day, the manager said, I believe this girl wants the job. He interviewed her, and bottom line is, she sold him, she got the job, And almost immediately she became #1 in production, #1 salesperson there. As a matter of fact, a few months later, she was out producing the other 4 salespeople combined. And then she got a big break. She broke her leg. And it was a serious break. She was in a cast from her hip, literally, to her ankle. Doctor said it's going to be 10 months before you'll be able to go back to work. So 10 days later, she showed back up at the radio station on crutches, hobbling around, hired a driver to drive her around, but hey, it was so difficult getting in and out of cars, she knew she had to do something else. But now she's being fed with hope. She's seen what she's been able to do. She's seen the changes that have come to the inevitable question. What can I do now? People with hope get to be creative, you see. What can I do now that will enable me to remain or retain my productivity? I simply cannot fight this getting in and out of the car a dozen times a day, and sometimes the person I want to see is not even there. She started studying telephone selling and became so good at it, her productivity went up. Then the other salespeople came to her and said, tell us what you're doing. She started teaching them. Then the sales manager quit, and they petitioned a management to make Pam the sales manager, and they did. Now she really got busy, and production doubled and tripled. As a matter of fact, it was with Disney radio chain, and so they started taking her to other radio stations, and productivity went up in every case. She was invited to speak, and incidentally, after a few weeks of that, they made her the vice president in charge of sales. Now here's a lady 3.5 years earlier having a psychiatrist tell her she's never going to do anything because she's going to be depressed and in this condition all of her life. And now 3.5 years later, she's the vice president in charge of sales for Disney Radio. They invited her to speak at the National Radio Broadcasters Association, and she was so effective, 18 stations invited her to come do some training in their company. Today she's a published author, internationally known speaker. Started with hope.